Welcome to the Curmudgeon Cellar, the 93rd time. From 100th video, which won't be number 93, it'll actually be like number 98 or something. I'm still figuring that out. I'm going to make some changes, cosmetics. I know my video guy wants to dress it up some, and I'm all for that. So we'll give it a shot. Let's see what's happening. We'll start by answering. First one. I hate when my players play Dragonborn, but they tend to have gorilla-sized arms that could tear my head off its shoulders, so I let it slide. Yeah, well, if you saw that picture of me standing next to Joe Manganiello, who's the only other person I know that avidly plays a Dragonborn, his hands are large enough to rip the face off the front of my skull. So when he, declared his love of Dragonborns, I didn't say anything. Of course, when he played my game down in his basement, he played a magic user named Zylarthan. And he autographed my book showing where he played Zylarthan. And see, because Zylarthan was a named character in the first 3 books. He was the only named character in the first 3 books, given as an example of creating a character. So that's where I understand, there's some people you don't argue with. However, when you set ground rules at the beginning, then you don't have to worry about that. Okay, now somebody wants to get picky with me. Stream of consciousness writing might best be ascribed to Jack Kerouac in the modern era. Kerouac turned this style of writing, spontaneous prose, and compared it to the improvisation of his beloved jazz musicians. Revision, he believed, was akin to lying and detracted from the ability of prose to capture the truth of a moment. Well, I'm not going to argue that. That's even what I said. I said that my hero was somebody different, Hunter S. Thompson, who invented gonzo journalism, which was a form of stream of consciousness writing. And so, yeah, I read Kerouac when I was a much younger man. If you weren't into reading that kind of stuff, it was kind of difficult until you learned how to do it. But my favorite is Hunter S. Thompson, known for his rants, his long run-on paragraphs and sentences. But you got the essence of the man's thoughts. You got the euphony and the rhythm of his mental speech. We're going to talk about mental speech here a little later. This might not be a very long one tonight, so I'll warn you now. When and why did TSR add the idea that the demi-humans, elves and dwarves, could see in the dark? The first house rule I make is to get rid of characters seeing in the dark. Dark is scary. All right, valid question. It came from an aggregation of various writings about those two in particular. Dwarves were able to see underground and do all their mining and everything, obviously underground. And common sense would say they couldn't use lamps and everything all the time because carbon monoxide would build up, whatever you want to go. But many, many writers gave dwarves. And keep in mind that when some European writers and storytellers were talking about dwarves, they weren't talking about the little Gimlis, gruff. They were also, dwarves that had different meanings. They were small and evil and mischievous in some cultures, and malicious and scheming. And they could see, why? Because they could see in the dark. Now, elves. Elves is a different story, I think. Everybody, it seems like all the different authors that dealt with elves all wanted to make them super special and give them all these weird abilities to make them superior to humans. They can hear things that we can't hear. They can track things in the woods that we can't track. And that I don't remember them having seeing in the dark as a specific skill set when in the early game. They had great tracking skills and things like that. But you must remember that when D&D was being formulated, and we're going to talk about that too, the formulation of D&D. In fact, I'm going to take a note right now while I think about it, in view of some stuff that's been prevalent online in this last week. I certainly mean to address that. I just forgot to write it down earlier. Elves were super special. I never cared for elves that much, to be honest. I did like dwarves, and maybe because they weren't that much better at a lot of different things. And I had a very good experience with dwarves in my second ever game I played. Pardon me, trying not to fall asleep tonight. I really may have to start doing these things at a different time. Anyway, they had these special abilities at the beginning because that's what made them special. That made them kind of unique. There were many now politically incorrect words thrown around about elves and people that chose to play elves back in the early days. We'll just simply leave it there and let your imagination run amok. And if you don't want yours to see in the dark, that's fine. It's your world. Not a problem. You're right. The dark is scary when you're young. And the dark can be scary when you live in a world populated by monsters, some of whom can see in the dark. Okay. This is in response to a couple episodes ago when someone was talking about boule being used for something else. Okay. And he says, okay, I don't know what the Cascoid page is. Sorry, I sent a message to what I assume was your Facebook page. If anyone wants to Google it, it's spelled Bula. Let me get my glasses and make sure I get this right, because I cut and pasted this. Yeah, B-U-L-L-A, and that's the seal and the rope and all that. Well, that's okay, that's fine, but it's not a boule. The boule was named the boule because I was feeling whimsical. When I asked for one of the bag monsters that hadn't been named and specified yet. Oh, by the way, if you look over the top of my head, you'll see Joe Manganiello, and if you look carefully, you'll see that enormous hand that's swallowed my shoulder. Anyway, back to the story. It was the bullet because a couple of times it had been introduced, it ran down the hall, knocked everybody over, and it kind of looked like a bullet. So I decided to make it the boule, it was an homage to the original name, Bullet. It was also the land shark. I spelled it the way I spelled it because that's the way I wanted to spell it, and that's the way I wanted to pronounce it because it is in my language, after all, Mandarin. So that's how that happened. And so no, I didn't know. I was playing off the word bullet, the English word bullet. Instead of 2 L's and a T, I made 1 L and 2 T's. And made it look a little Frenchy. That's all it was. Some fun. Let's see. Okay, here again, I'm taking the blame for something I did. You introduced psionics to D&D. Where did you get the idea from? George R.R. Martin stuff? George R.R. Martin's sci-fi was around at the same time, and he replaces magic with psionics in his setting. Also, scions in his world are always weak characters like people in test tubes. Were scions from X-Men? No! As I've said many times before, I created psionics because I convinced Gary that brain moles and brain eaters and mind flayers weren't fair to the players if there wasn't some minuscule, no matter how remote chance, then there should be a defense against them. And originally, as I set it up, it was an extremely thin series chances and lucky die rolls to even have the potential for psionics. Because I believe in balance. I believe that every monster has to have a weakness, just as every monster has a special skill or ability or personality or whatever. I think everything should have a weakness. When I created the relay, I made the area underneath the sail in the back very vulnerable to arrow or missile fire. Otherwise, that thing's a tank. And as anybody that's a historian knows, tanks are real hard to beat with hand weapons. You can beat on a tank with a sword all day long, but you're not going to have, all you're going to do is annoy the people inside, cause them to come out and shoot you, or in this case, turn around and eat you. Psionics were all about Dr. Strange. Gary and I were both big fans of Dr. Strange. When I told him that I thought that, something needed to be done to redress the balance, we both agreed that Dr. Strange was an interesting mechanic in how he did his things and what he did and that. And so psionics were really based on Marvel Comics, psionics from Dr. Strange. And, other things. I do not recall being a fan of George. Here we go again, blood sugar. I do not recall being a fan of George R. R. Martin sci-fi at the time, mainly because I wasn't reading a lot of sci-fi at the time. I was voraciously reading Swords and Sorcery. Voraciously, because again, in those early days, we were looking for new ideas to suck out of the books we were reading and stick them into our games. So, no, that's not where they came from. They were supposed to be just a teeny weeny slight chance. Maybe if you rolled up 100 characters in a campaign, one might have the potential to be psionic. But of course, with anything else we did in that game, people ran with it and took it to places that we had not intended it to go. And they just kind of ignored our guidelines about how infrequent. I know that's rude. I'm sorry. How infrequent they were. Okay. About 2004. Yeah, about 2004, I started playing a game online. And what knocked me out about it, what just amazed me every time I logged on to do it, was that I was playing with people. It was late at night here, of course, but I was playing with people from Georgia, or Georgia, state of, Georgia, country, Russia, Germany, New Zealand, right? And that astonished me because it was such a new thing. And back then, that was Age of Wonders, and one of us had to go online and then share our IP address with the rest of the players, and they all typed into it and came on, and one of us basically hosted the game. Great fun. Wonderful. It so opened the universe of gaming, literally, because now you could play with people all across the world in real time. Unlike what had gone before, which was play by mail. I really got to figure out what to do about this. It's only midnight, and I normally stay up till 2. More sugar. It's probably what's doing me in. In any event, playing online, what a gas. Wow. What possibilities. Now you can do it today. There's a Steam, which I have mixed feelings about. I've made my opinions clear in times past. But the concept, and then there's others. I know there's several others. Some you pay for time online, some you're just a member of. And it's come that my local group, my face-to-face group, I live on roughly the northwest tier of suburbs in Cincinnati. And 2 of my friends live 20 minutes away, and 2 of them live on the other side of town. And that's a considerable distance. That's a 40-minute drive. So on those nights that we can't be a full house, all 5 of us present, what we'll often do is play online, and we go to Steam and we play Scythe. Now, I'm not going to pimp for Scythe again for you, though I will tell everyone it's a great game. I love it. I play it online myself all the time. I'm either playing poker or Scythe whenever I want to break. But the concept is that, okay, we can't get together, but we plug into Discord, or we plug into Scythe chat. We've even used Skype. We all talk on one channel and we play on another. And so while we're not physically in the same room, the banter, the insults, etc., go on, which is an integral part of playing with your longtime friends. So it's not a bad thing. Now, I cannot envision role playing online because of the time involved. I wouldn't want to spend 3 or 4 hours online in a session. Couldn't do it. And let's face it, a good adventure takes 3 or 4 hours. And it can take many, many more. I ran one for 6.5 when I was in Hollywood in March. And I hadn't done one of those in a while, but it was fun. I enjoyed it. Fell back in. So, just because you can't get together face to face, of course, what's the best face to face? Conventions, yay, because you get to see so many faces. But one-on-one's good. Getting together with a bunch of people's good. Tomorrow I'm going to a grand opening of a new friendly local game store. Not new, the second edition of, in a different part of the city. The son of the first owner. And I'm going to go over and I'm friends with the other friendly local game store too. I'm great friends with them. But he's got a thriving, going business on his side, considerably far away. It's a 40-minute drive from where I live. And he's got a thriving group. His back tables are filled every night. I'm going to help this guy get his feet on the ground. If he needs me to come in and run a quote, quote, celebrity game some night or something to help draw people into his store and his grand opening, I'll be glad to do it for him. Because he's a friendly local game store, and we should all support our friendly local game stores. Because as we all know, they are the backbone. The brick and mortar shops are the backbone. They are what got this hobby started, and they are where the devotees still go. Let's see. All right. There's been some crap going on Facebook. There's a new movie coming out. The movie's partisan. It purports to be the story told from Dave Arneson's side. And I've been interviewed by these people, but apparently I'm in part 2. I don't care. They flew me to Denver and I had a great time for 3 days. So I don't care if I end up on the cutting room floor. I had a great trip. It was free. But there's an evil woman who came up on some dubious website called Katara or something like that, who wrote a really biased hack job purporting that the original players are fighting back against Gary's legacy or some crap like that. Rob Kuntz figured in it prominently. What came across in the article, according from Rob Kuntz, was bitterness and bile and spite. Now, Rob has since come online and said that she cherry-picked all of his answers out of a very long interview. Well, I understand how that can happen. It's happened to me before. So maybe that is the case. But there's been a previous interview. Sorry, I had to... I just realized what I was doing. I'm sorry. I had cords hanging down and they were getting in the way. There's some bitterness and spite going on. Who made what? Well, if you want to go back to the very roots, I guess you go to Braunstein and Wesley. And their Braunstein games that were personified miniatures games. And you go back to chainmail, which was both Gary and Dave in both groups. And there's no doubt about it. There's no argument about it. Dave started a method of what we now know as role-playing. Now, you got to understand what this came out of, and then you get a better understanding of where it came from. There was a lot of diplomacy back in those days, late 60s, amongst gamers who were not necessarily huge diplomacy fans. Diplomacy was a game they played, though some of them were, but they played by mail a ton with postcards. And that was a big deal, because if you couldn't be face to face with somebody, you could play by mail with somebody else. And if you had a couple, 3 diplomacy sets, well, you could play with 2 or 3 people at a time by yourself. And diplomacy is role playing. Make no doubt about it. You bluff, you stammer, you threaten, you bully to get your way. They were all adept at that aspect. From chainmail, in many places, came the idea that this guy's special, this particular figure is special because he never dies. He must be a superhero. Okay. Dave came up with a game. It would be a mistake to say that Dave came up with a set of rules. He didn't, except in his head. And I don't accept those as rules. I accept rules as what's written down, so other people can at least look at the notes and then have them explained. Excuse me. Dave was very poor at organization. Dave, I think, winged a lot because he knew in his mind how he wanted to work. And so people tell him what they're doing, and he'd say, oh, okay, this is what happened. That is an outgrowth of being a judge or a referee. Mostly we call them judges in a miniatures game. They took the input and said, okay, this is what happened. DM is nothing different than a judge. They take the input, they see the circumstances, they make a ruling. No difference, none whatsoever. Nuance is the only difference, and very little difference in that. So who came up with what? Dave came up with a really neat idea of this game to play, and he showed it to some people. And Gary, being the rules codifier that he was, said, oh man, this is cool. Let's put this stuff down in writing so we can all do it. Dave was really poor on organization. Dave was poor on note-taking. He may have been an idiot savant in what he could keep in his mind. I don't know. The only thing I can attest to is the oft-told story about the half a peach basket, one of those half baskets, half bushels, a peck basket, whatever, full of notes and a couple, 3 different writing utensils in various degrees of legibility, a few scraps of typewritten pages, and the only organization that he had was a relatively clear delineation of how the Temple of the Frog worked. That he had set down and codified. From it, I had to make a supplement, which I did. So I took what I thought he did. So now, who did what? Gary codified it. Made it saleable. Made it commercial. Promoted it. Does it really matter all that much? In that they were both involved in it? Those of us that know. You've never heard me preach at the altar of Gygax. Though I have great respect. I had great respect for Gary. I get along well with several members of most of his family, well, all of his family that I know. Now keep in mind that this article that's so, supposedly original players push back against Legend of Gygax was written by the same person that wrote an article for Gail Gygax on one of her websites that was just kissing Gail's fanny. So this might give you an idea of the bias that this woman may or may not have had and started all this shit up again. What difference does it make? I'll be quite blunt. They're both dead. Neither one of them are making royalties. Neither of them made royalties for years. Enjoy the men for what they did. Dave came up with some great ideas of how to spin this thing. Gary codified it, promoted it, and sold it. The overlooked guy in this, because chainmail is so often quoted, is Jeff Perren, who co-wrote it with Gary. How come everybody forgets about Jeff? Not fair. Great guy. Wonderful gamer. Overlooked in all this argument about who did what. How far back do you want to go? Do we go back to Bronstein, who had the idea of assuming roles of, some sort of Ivanhoe game? Or, do we go to, where do we go? Chainmail, what difference does it make? It's here. It's what we enjoy. I never claimed that Dave wasn't integral to the development of the game. The concept, the inception of the game. He didn't have any hand in the development because he didn't seem to be interested. Let's see, what else we got? Oh, time's coming out about right. Well, the only other thing I get to say is I'll be going to AppleCon in about 3 weeks. Now, in note of that, 3 weeks will put it in about 96 or so, which will be about the 100th once I've done. I'm going to take a break both those weeks. I will not be, first weekend, I'm going to be 4 days in Maine. I'm coming back, and 36 hours later, I'm going to Illinois. So I'm taking a 2-week break. I'll let you know before it happens. But there will be a 2-week break in there. And then we'll see what goes there. This one is a little lean because I didn't get a lot of commentary, which must mean I'm getting boring, or we've answered all the questions there are to answer. And keep in mind that I don't just talk about TSR and D&D. I love gaming of all sorts. The other night, when only 4 of us got together, we played a game of Power Grid. Yeah, that's had to go look at the game. Yeah, great. We play it maybe once or twice a year. Great fun. We get together for the social, for the pleasure we get from each other's company, as well as the razzing and the teasing, because amongst men, who I'm qualified to speak on, teasing and ragging and that is what guys do instead of other less masculine things, or what's perceived to be masculine. Anyway, 3 weeks roughly, I will be in AppleCon. I am really looking forward there. Never been in the state of Maine. I understand the leaves are going to be beautiful, and there's a cider contest going on. Oh God, it can't get any better than that. So I'll see you, talk to you again in about a week if I get enough stuff to talk about. Also remember that if you subscribe, you get a free set of dice. One of my sponsors monitors the subscriptions that I get through YouTube, and we'll send you the information. You send in the postage, and he'll send you the dice you want out of what's available. My Kickstarter thingy is still in work. We're getting over the fact that we had a family, a dire family emergency for some time, and that really put things off. So again, it's not like I don't feel like I only feel like I maybe got you interested a little earlier than I should have. Like I said, it's all been written. The figures are made. It's just we're trying to get the video together. A couple of little odd, quirky things. But when it goes, I promise you this, when it goes up, it's all made. It's all there. There'll be no, it's just, okay, we funded, print, make, ship. I'm not going to be one of these Kickstarter crooks. On that note, I'll say Dodada Gobi. Oh, hello. I'm still figuring out when this thing starts. Welcome to my cellar.
He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs. Still quite a feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Last man around when them rates went down. Called it Gary in that Lake Geneva town. Hey Gary, it's an awful mess. Let me edit, we'll have success. D&D and Dragon Magazine. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Magic missile, it's a mortar shell. Make it hit in the first level spell. Brought psionics to the game to attack that wizard brain. ESR and fantasy, collection of micro armory. Tight with tramp under a tree, high as could be. He's the curmudgeon who wrote about the dungeons. Now he's the feller, live from the cellar. Talks about D&D and old school RPGs, but he's still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Still quite the feller, the curmudgeon in the cellar. Curmudgeon.